Well, honestly, here on Alex Garrett Podcasting, the Sunday Pod used to be specifically for politics because I still believe there are different voices out there that are not the Sunday shows that are better than the Sunday shows. And I've got a man right here who's better than all of these people on here. Zach Miller. First of all, Zach, you're with Truck Stop Radio, but more importantly, you and I are close in our political nature, in our friendship. So thanks for coming back.
Oh, absolutely. And what a great introduction. I appreciate that.
Uh, we were literally talking off air about this whole thing, and I was like, across the street they painted some green. I think they're bike lanes, and that kind of clicked in you. Why did that click in you from the start? What was that? When I said that, it seemed to resonate with you.
Well, this is sort of a thing, and I want to be very clear about something. I'm not against bike lanes at all. I think they're fine. I think they make a lot of sense in a lot of cases. But I am somebody who, I make my living with the trucking industry. My website, newyorktruckstop.com, like you said, our radio show. Our radio show deals a little bit more with small business issues, but, trucking is a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly I am, full disclosure, I'm on the board of directors of the State Trucking Association. So, trucking is very near and dear to my heart. So what's my issue with bike lanes? My issue with bike lanes is a lot of times they're designed in such a way that makes it harder for trucks to park and harder for trucks to maneuver. And obviously, the last thing we want to see is any incident between a cyclist and a truck. Because when you
Correct.
see an incident between a cyclist and truck, 9 out of 10 times the cyclist is not making it home, which is just an unacceptable tragedy, and we want to avoid that. At the same time, we want to make sure that trucks have the ability to get in, get out, make their deliveries, and move on. And a lot of times, not all the time, some of these bike lanes are designed very well, but
I agree with that.
a lot of times these bike lanes are designed in a way that does make it harder for the trucks to make their deliveries. And usually DOT goes through a process of when they design their bike lane to get community input. And a lot of times, the trucking industry will say, here's where we think this may not be a great design. And sometimes DOT listens, sometimes not. I have no issues with the DOT process. It is what it is.
Exactly.
But Alex, during COVID, they've not DOT necessarily, but City Hall, has pushed some different agendas, and they've done it a little bit more quickly, because
And a bit under the cover of night, would you say? Or
I would say that that's probably fair. Definitely related to, emergency situations. We don't have to go because, it's quote unquote temporary. So we don't have to go through the whole process of, what a permanent process would be. So, so Alex was helping us record our show Friday, as he's been doing throughout COVID, done a fantastic job, of course. And he said, yeah, and it was weird because I left the station yesterday and everything was normal, and I come in this morning and there's like this green paint, and I go to Alex, and Alex actually said, he's like, I think it's a bike lane. I'm like, that could be problematic because Broadway is so tight to begin with. It's such a major commercial corridor, at least in, good times, and knock on wood, it returns to that.
Sure.
And so I'm thinking, my gosh, you're gonna take away that kind of space in that area overnight. This is going to cause problems. I mean, this is certainly going to cause immediate problems. And in terms of what the future is going to look like, I don't know. We could speculate, we could talk about that, but it did raise some serious red flags when you mentioned it to me.
So then you inspired me in a way because we had that comment. I go out and investigate. Sure enough, it's a bike lane. Sure enough, there's one lane of traffic on Broadway, and truck or no truck, that's not an easy. That's like threading a thimble, and
exactly
not temporary, right?
So I think this is a great question, and I need to do some research myself. I need to contact people. I am thinking that this is what I guess the word I'll use is temporary to permanent. I believe this is set up to be temporary. I believe that as far as the rules would say, this is temporary. But if you're asking me if I think this is going to be temporary, no, I don't. No, I think this is going to be here for the foreseeable future. And I think a lot of it has to do with this notion that people are really starting to bike to work, that bike
Mm,
commuting is becoming popular. And it may be, it may not be. I'm not 100% buying the city's numbers. I am buying that there are more people on bikes, which is
mm,
generally probably a good thing. Um, but again, the issue is the nature of work now. How many people
right.
are going to work? More of their work is going to be from home. How many people are
Hmm.
just going to go into the office 1 or 2 days a week? Because obviously, I think they really set this up for the people who live in well, not just necessarily
Yeah,
Williamsburg, but people who live in
I got
Brooklyn,
you.
who bike to Lower Manhattan. Um, and that's all well and good for the first week in August. Is
Right.
this really all well and good for the first week in November? Which goes back to your question of, well, is this temporary or is this permanent? Because
Mm,
if this is okay, let's do that, like open streets for the
right.
restaurants. It goes until October 31st. So let's say this bike lane goes until October 31st. Is that such a big deal? Probably not. I mean, it's going to be costly for the trucks making deliveries there,
Sure.
no doubt. But in terms of the city, is that a big deal? No. If it continues, maybe.
Zach, you're talking about the truck, by the way. So across the street, and you know the area well because you go to the studio on a normal year. Um, and there's Dwayne Reed there, and I'm sure you might have seen trucks are literally making deliveries to Dwayne Reed. Now, driving alone, what happens if they have to unload a bunch of stuff and all these bikers are right next to them as they're trying to unload the stuff? I mean, that's a problematic thing too.
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, that is certainly a safety issue, um, for the cyclist, for any pedestrian that goes by, and for the truck driver too, because if the truck driver is,
Mhm.
stacking boxes and looking to move them, he might have his back turned to the bike lane, and it
Exactly.
could be problematic. It really could be problematic. And this is one of the things that, and DOT has been doing some good work with this, but they need to do more in terms of creating commercial loading zones, and that would be the perfect place for it. If
Right.
you have some major shops along Broadway, it's like you need more commercial loading zones. I'll tell you though, another frustrating thing for truck drivers is that a lot of times these commercial loading zones are being used by either Uber and Lyft, or sometimes New York police vehicles.
Right.
I no joke, I have seen NYPD traffic enforcement parked
Mm,
in commercial loading zones. And then when I see them and then so if a truck has to double park and they get a ticket because traffic enforcement is in their spot, I mean,
right.
how insane is that? And
Well,
that's what really gets on my nerves about some of this, is because it's like, well, now they have to double park, you know?
exactly.
So
And
now the
I was
truck,
saying, is double parking like going to be okay now? And sure enough, I saw someone get fined. So,
I know you texted me right away, which was great, but well, I mean, greatly you texted me. Terrible that it happened.
but like I was thinking,
I
because of your show, I'm starting to think more. Are they designing these things as a way to bring in revenue through this finding? I mean, is that like a residual they're hoping to happen? I don't know.
So this is a really good question that I don't think there's a an official answer to. But certainly when you know how much the city needs revenue,
Mhm.
and you know how anytime the city needs revenue, I mean, and this is even before de Blasio, just anytime the city needs revenue, it's,
Mhm.
well, enforcement becomes a way to get revenue. Trucks is a big one, other motorists, small business fines. And we've talked about that as well. So
Mhm.
I don't like accusing people of things when I really don't know. It doesn't smell great. Let's put it
Sure.
that way.
Zach, I'm also frustrated because it's almost like he has a lack of New York City geography, Mayor de Blasio, when he wants his
Hmm.
plans underway. What I mean by that is Broadway is a different animal than Sixth Avenue. I love the bike lane on Sixth Avenue, to be very honest with you. I think it's great. You have the cars on the other side of the median. You can just roll. But here, there's like no space for this. I feel like he doesn't understand the geography or chooses not to. I don't know.
I think it's the latter. I think he chooses not to. I do agree with you on Sixth Avenue. And again, that went through the normal process of how
Hmm.
to install a bike lane. So there was input, and they were able to design something that was a compromise. And that's the thing about compromise. Not everyone loves it, but that's kind of the point. Um, and really, you've nothing to complain about. But but yeah, some of these are just like really forced in, and I'm definitely with you. I don't think this is particularly concerned about the specifics of the area.
Right.
Kind of a joke that he wouldn't know this geography considering it's 2 feet from his office, but
Exactly. And there are no bike lanes by City Hall, by the way, just to let you know.
yeah, you know what's funny about that? I don't know this for a fact,
Mhm.
but I'm guessing that has to do with a security
Yeah,
situation because
probably so.
you can't have because you don't want someone just like to breeze right through. Um, but you know, then that raises other questions. But okay, so why are we pigeonholing these
Hmm.
bikers in this really like really tiny sliver of street space? Just to get to the edge of Manhattan and back to Brooklyn. It's very odd. It's also, like you say, very odd. Who puts this in on a Thursday night to Friday morning?
Or
You
that whole
know?
week. I don't. It's very
Yeah,
strange. Like,
like it's usually just like, all right, Monday. We're
yep.
gonna install it over the weekend, and Monday the bike lane is gonna go in. It's just like, really, Friday
Well,
morning?
I had started to notice it a few days earlier than that, but when I started to really notice it was actually Monday night. They like blocked off traffic to do this, and I was like, "What is going on?" But I know I'm not focused on the truckers as much as you are, and that's okay. We can come at from different.
Yeah, definitely.
But you also do come from a small business, and the reason why I'm literally boycotting these 150 miles of bike lane, the $1.7 billion is enough to do that. I mean, that's crazy to me. But the second thing is how it's being done while everything else is on pause. Like they're pausing businesses from doing indoor dining and gyms, but this project can go on as if nothing happened. I don't understand it.
I think Alex, that's a really fair point. And again, I think things like this have a very unintended consequence of turning people against biking and
Mhm.
bike lanes and the bike advocates for that reason, because it's like, yes, the notion of green transportation is important,
Sure.
um, but it's hard to sit there and be told how important this is when every business I care about is closing. When it's like you said, gym owners have absolutely no idea when they can reopen. Um, restaurant owners have no idea when they could be up, even even at
Right.
70% capacity. Um, Everybody is concerned about the future of the city, and rightfully so. And
Sure.
then if the best the city can do is look at these bike lanes on Broadway, it's like, you got to be kidding me.
But they don't. In fact, I think if I didn't bring it up, no one would, to be honest. I mean, it seems like no one would care enough to point this out.
Well, you, you know, a couple, maybe a year or so ago, on our radio show, we had Jaden Horan, who
Yeah.
you're familiar with. He used to work for what was it, Reclaim
Reclaim
New
New
York?
York.
Yeah,
A name we
and
need back
Jaden,
so desperately, by the way.
I agree. And Jaden said, and so Jaden's not a native New Yorker. And Jaden said, New Yorkers are very strange because they, are very tough, and they talk about, like, how much they like to fight something they don't like. But when it comes to city policy, they just leave. They
Hmm.
just get fed up and they leave, and they don't fight. And that, as a native New Yorker, that really stuck with me.
Mm.
It bothered. He's 100% right, and that's why it bothered me. And we're seeing this on steroids now with COVID, because
Yeah.
people are just
Yep.
packing up. They're packing up and they're leaving, and there's nothing to fight for. So then it gets back to your thing. Well, why aren't people fighting the bike lanes on Broadway?
Right.
Because they're gone. Because there's no one to fight.
And so I don't know. It just and the city loves it like that, right? They love to not have their policies noticed. So and that is why
It makes their life so much easier.
but that is why I cannot help but feel like their agenda. They purposefully locked us in more than they needed to extend their agenda, and maybe that's conspiratorial, but that's just how I'm starting to feel with all this stuff I'm seeing now. And I don't know why my
Here's the th-
by the way.
No, here's the thing, and you're not the only person who's been saying that. I've been hearing a lot about that. Is it conspiratorial? Sure. The issue is, I don't think the city really gave you a whole lot of options than to start thinking this way. Especially once, because they set up a really good plan with the phased plan,
Right.
phase one, phase two, and 2 weeks. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant, totally the right way to do it. But
Sure.
then you get to the point towards the end where they just kind of stopped, where they're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, now some of the stuff we said we were going to do, we're going to go back on, and we're not going to give you any sort of markers moving forward. And even even with the schools, which is a whole other show that we don't
Mm-hmm.
need to really go into, but
Sure.
um, but with the schools, they still gave them the markers. It's like, these are the numbers that we need to see
Mm-hmm.
consistently to be able to reopen the schools. Okay, why can't those numbers apply to gyms? Why can't those
Right.
numbers apply to indoor dining? What is going on here, um, that that you're specifically keeping these
Right.
places closed when you're allowing others to reopen?
Right.
And going back to your point, when you do stuff like that, you open yourself up for people to say things like, this is an agenda and they're purposely doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the truth?
No one knows.
No, probably not. But you know what? It, you put yourself in this situation.
Right.
You, Governor Cuomo, Mayor De Blasio, you guys put yourself in that, and people are going to complain about it.
Zach, with the truckers, have they been heavily hit with enforcement things and I don't know, other stuff during this quarantine unfairly?
So, the first like week or two, like when COVID hit,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like we were still playing catch up, they still got hit hard. But then
Mm-hmm.
once we all like hunkered down and oh, this is a pandemic, it was pretty good. It was pretty smooth sailing. And then as the city started to pick up again, things did start picking up again. From what I'm hearing, it's not quite as it was, but but now that we have had so many spaces taken away, and again, we got to do what we got to do to save small businesses. I'm not
Sure.
complaining about that, but trucks did lose space and they weren't
Mm.
given other space. So we're starting to see a pickup in tickets, parking tickets, as
Wow.
well as some of these engine idling tickets.
Wow.
Because, well, I'll tell you about the engine idling tickets, because those are citizens are allowed to film a truck idling for over three
Oh,
minutes and
okay.
and sort of write their own summons. And with people out of work, it's an easy mark for them. So since people are out of work and the city set up this insane system, we're seeing an influx of that, which is very disconcerting. It's something that we're fighting.
And of course, this week he announced the enforcement and a $10,000 fine for those who might violate a
Oh
quarantine.
yeah.
But does that affect the truckers too now?
It should not. Trucks are essential.
Okay.
Trucks are there essential exempt.
Okay.
Um, so
What?
it's but here's the thing. As you said, it's a $10,000 fine. So suppose you have somebody in a beat up Honda Civic with a Rhode Island license plate versus somebody in a 2019,
Mm-hmm.
Kenworth tractor trailer Rhode Island plate. Who are you going to look to give a $10,000 fine to?
The Rhode
And
Islander.
again, exactly. And look, I again, this is hypothetical. This is sort of letting my frustration, I guess, get the better of me, because they
Sure.
really shouldn't be pulled over. But I have yet to see any sort of enforcement blitz against motorists that didn't disproportionately affect the trucking industry.
Wow. Well, do you want to explain that a little bit? Because I'm kind of curious now what you mean by that.
Anytime a municipality does some sort of enforcement blitz related to motorists about, oh, we need to crack down on XYZ bad behavior, or like a checkpoint, let's randomly stop people, trucks always get hit.
I know.
They,
I
al-
see it
they,
everywhere, like at the Lincoln tunnel, at the Midtown tunnel.
yep,
Yeah.
they always get hit. For
I,
one is revenue, one is the fact is, I mean, it is possible that oh, is there contraband on this? Again, you can pull someone over for not
mhm.
having for a busted taillight, or the blinker's not working. Big trucks, they have lots of lights, they got lots of
Right.
circuits. The odds are higher that one's not working. So it just is law of averages. You
Is
see
there
a nice big truck, you're going to pull it over.
it? Well, and also, truckers are sort of defined by the Smokey Bandit movie, right? Like all these truckers nationwide. But does law enforcement carry that stigma about them? Like, I don't know. Do they say, "Oh, this is a regular trucker. We got to pull him over"? I don't know. Is there something like that involved too?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think it's usually like that. I think it's more like a mobile ATM machine is how they
Okay,
look at it.
sure.
Um, and especially, it's interesting because with sort of the rise in e-commerce, we're seeing we're not seeing as many over the road delivery. That's what the Smoking the Bandit is, right? That big
Right,
trucks over the road. We're not seeing so many of those. We're seeing a lot more smaller trucks, localized.
sure.
So a lot of the truck drivers you see really do live in the area. I mean, they have pretty regular schedules, and they're part of the tri-state area, tri-state community,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. But then that also gets back to the whole, my gosh, why are you harassing your own
Right.
your own citizens? Why
Citizens. Yep.
your own businesses, particularly in this area? And I don't have the full numbers, but I know it's a decent chunk. You're talking about a lot of immigrant and minority workforce,
Exactly.
because they live here. It's good work. Um, and look, you're going to do an enforcement blitz. You're going to do an enforcement blitz. You're the mayor. I can't stop you. But
Hmm.
don't tell me how much you love diversity. And how what a wonderfully diverse and amazing place this is when you're continually harassing the minority population.
It's grotesque actually that they say they
Yeah.
defend them and yet they don't in a lot of ways through the business aspect anyway. Now, you said people are leaving because they don't or not fighting back. What about the association? Are they sticking around to fight this out, or what are their plans as the city moves forward, or whatever we're doing right now?
You, No, I think that, well, I mean, the Trucking Association specifically has really spent the last couple of years building up relationships in city government, both in the legislative and regulatory bodies. So those relationships are really solid. So that's been helping, sort of help the
Hmm.
trucks and help the industry. So the trucking's not going away, and the Trucking Association is definitely going to be a part of all these conversations moving forward. Um, but now, in terms of some of these other maybe these small business groups like your chambers of commerce, your
Sure.
bids, I think there's a lot more sort of an urgency really to really start getting aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
and to start fighting, because that's the thing. So many of these businesses are in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and there really does need to be there really do need to be people fighting and fighting hard for them, because this, I mean, what are we, first second week in August? I mean,
Right.
you, you know
And
you
they're
know
supposed
you
to be
take this
moving by
another
now.
month. I know, you take this another month and it's just like, it'll get ugly.
And and again, this is why the bureaucratic process just drives me crazy. So thing with the bike lanes and other. Well, that's the other question. Are you hearing of or are you seeing other projects coming up that no one knew was going to come up during this, but actually are starting to be seen? Like, have they seen any other stuff going on?
No, and I think that that's another area of frustration, because the mayor announced bus lane and busway projects that he was going to do around the
Hmm.
city, in all boroughs. And I am, through the Trucking Association, I'm part of this outreach committee to, look over the plans and offer suggestion, just like for the trucking perspective. And so I've been on a whole bunch of Zooms with DOT and these community groups, and they showed me the plans, and like they're moving slowly, but they're moving in the proper manner.
Sure.
Totally, it's a great process. I think DOT is going to come up with some really great bus ways that serve the communities they need. So it's actually, it's slow, but it's exciting, and they're doing it right. So when you said, look at what they're doing with this on Broadway, that also sent another shock to me, because I'm like, wait a minute, but they're doing this other project, this frankly more important project, because buses are more important.
Sure.
They're doing it the right way. They're doing it the great way. So what is going on that the good stuff they're doing right, but then they're just throwing this together? It's just it's just seems like this is how did the Blasio administration has always been. It's always been, scattershot. One hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing.
Right.
And how many resources have to be diverted, and I'm not even talking about money, I'm just talking about manpower. How many resources have to be diverted for these, like quickie little projects that take
Right.
away from the big stuff that they're really working on?
Well, and Zach, you also said that this bill that they did for the new bike lanes and bus lanes was signed under like no one knew about it. Is that right? $1.7 billion council thing, whatever was going on there.
That was no, that was people knew about it because it was a Corey Johnson bill.
Oh,
And if Corey Johnson has his name on something, you better believe he's going to talk about it for long and hard.
wow.
But Alex, you actually do raise an interesting point here, because as you know, because you're plugged in all this stuff, we have a mayoral election coming up next year.
Yep.
And so you have Corey Johnson, who is the Speaker of the City Council on one end, and you have Scott Stringer, who is the comptroller on the other end.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they're the two front runners for the Democrats right now.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
can't
go
believe
ahead.
I'm saying this, but Scott Stringer looks actually moderate right now with all this stuff going on.
Terrifyingly, I would agree with you, and it's going to be an ugly election. But I think
Mm.
that some of these things that you're going to be seeing in the
Hmm.
next couple of months, and that you already started to see during COVID, think more mayoral platform, and
Mm.
less how do we help New Yorkers through this crisis. And
Exactly.
and to be fair to Corey Johnson and Scott Stringer, that's politics 101. That's how it's always been. I can't kick and scream about a politician doing politician things in an election
Mm.
cycle.
Right. Well, right. And that is almost why Trump does these press conferences, because he can't do the rally. So he's trying to get to his base a certain way. Biden
Yeah,
seems to be tripping over him
yeah. I
every
mean,
day. It's crazy.
yeah.
Every day. But I've got to ask you, Vision Zero. I know at the heart of all this is Vision Zero, because they want the bike lanes, because they're listening to lobbyists, um, whatever's the case. But Vision Zero, has it truly been good for New York, or no? Have there been any good things about it?
So there definitely have been some good things. For the first couple of years, it definitely worked. Some of the good things are the reduced speeds, banning a lot of these dangerous left turns. I think,
Okay.
like you said, when they put in bike lanes the right way, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. And I think just and again, I have mixed feelings on the speed cameras.
Sure.
Um, but at the end of the day, if it does get people to slow down, I'm not going to complain about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But the last couple of years, like the last year and a half, Vision Zero really has started to fail,
Mm.
unfortunately. And I think the reasons why it's failing is because they're really focusing on the wrong things.
Wow.
The thing about Vision Zero is, and yes, reduce the speeds, reduce dangerous turns, but you have to understand that, and you know this better than most. A person at the end of the day, is responsible for themselves and their own
Mm.
well-being. And a lot of the messaging with Vision Zero is, if you are a cyclist, you don't have, the responsibility is not yours. You don't need to obey traffic laws. You don't need, you don't, because it's always the car or the truck's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, if there's an incident with a bike and a car or truck, generally the car and the truck is going to be okay, and the cyclist is
The
not.
person will
So
not, right?
of course, the greater responsibility is always on the licensed motor vehicle operator. But that doesn't excuse you from running red lights and going the wrong way and not signaling and all that stuff. And I look at it like this: once they backed off the message of personal responsibility,
Mm.
of we have these traffic laws for a reason, things really got bad with Vision Zero. And I look at it like, because it's funny, last time you had me on, we talked a little bit about The Last Dance with
Yeah, Michael
with
Jordan.
Jordan and all that. And I look at it like, look, this is America. Freedom is freedom's the greatest thing.
That's right.
Jordan is freedom, but freedom won't work without personal responsibility. And Pippen
Mm.
is that personal responsibility. You need them. You need freedom and you need personal responsibility together, working
Right.
together in order to succeed. And frankly, it's the same thing with COVID.
Mm.
Everybody loves talking about, well, there's an infringement upon my freedom. Okay, and what are you doing to keep yourself and your family safe? And that's why the mask stuff works so well with COVID. And that's why,
Right.
frankly, if you told cyclists, it's like, listen, you have to be vigilant. You have to cycle defensively. You have to obey these traffic rules. Wear a helmet. They don't even tell them to wear a helmet.
Right.
Wear a
Zach, and they're
helmet.
going down, and these bikers they think they own the whole thing. They go down like 100 miles
Yes.
an hour. And like I've said this before, rollerblading on one leg, I love that, but I just find it hilarious that someone with two legs complains about a car. It's like, dude, maybe you were in the wrong too. Like, why are you complaining about this? Now, personal responsibility does do with the bikers, but then we also have to say, well, when there's a surge in biker deaths, maybe Vision Zero has to be fixed, and maybe we don't have to just put it all on the car at the same time. And
I totally agree.
in that conversation.
Completely. And that's the whole thing. It's like the cliche, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a
Mm-hmm.
different result. Well, you built Vision Zero a very specific way, and it stopped working. So now you have to tinker with it, and you can't
Mm-hmm.
just say more enforcement on cars and trucks, more less maneuverability for cars and trucks. It's like, I'm sorry, you did it wrong. You did a lot of good things, but the messaging was wrong, and you got to go back and change that messaging, and you'll start to see the numbers get better.
Mm.
And then once those numbers get better, and guess what? Keep putting in bike lanes, because they're being used properly, and
Yep,
it's good for the city, and people will
it
feel
is.
safe biking.
And I do, I love when they shut it down to do the biking on Saturdays. I guess they're not doing this year because of COVID, but those are kind of cool.
Yeah,
Going down
unfortunately, they
Park
couldn't
Avenue
do it this year.
and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's always fun to see. But at the end of the day, I guess this leads to the ultimate question, right? We see the congestion pricing. We see these bike lanes coming in. We see lanes being reduced where they shouldn't be. Is our mayor anti-car? Is that what it all boils to?
I think that um, I think that there is a very loud, powerful faction in city government that is vehemently anti-vehicle. I mean, like, just really vehemently
Mm-hmm.
anti-vehicle, and they kind of run roughshod over the city. And it's causing a lot of problems because there are lots of communities that are
Mm-hmm.
reliant on their cars. And certainly, as the city is reliant on trucks. I mean,
Right.
90% of goods and services come via truck. So that has to be factored in. And um, it- you know, the mayor personally, I don't think really care. I think the mayor kind of likes cars. I don't think he
Oh, you mean
really
that
cares about
SUV?
all
He
this.
doesn't like cars? I mean, he doesn't like taking that drive in the SUV?
But he's also weak, and he lets people walk all over him instead of standing strong and saying, no, I'm the grown up in the room. So that's
Right.
the issue. It's not. I think
Instead,
he's
you've
more
got
anti being a grown up than he is
well,
anti
right,
car.
because instead you got Cyrus saying she's going to be the bigger person and resign because she didn't like the way De Blasio was handled. I mean, when these things happen, it is such a marker of his leadership, don't you think?
Definitely, definitely, and I just anecdotally, I know people who worked in city government, not for him specifically, but worked for
Mm.
city government under his mayoralty, and they said it was very they felt very disenfranchised
Well, that's been in the
and
papers too.
disappointed.
And the weird thing
Yeah.
is, I don't know if you ever talked to him, but I've gotten to see the mayor multiple times, and he's actually decent to talk to. Like he's like, "Hey man, how you doing?" It's like you almost want to not have a beer with him, but you almost want to talk to him a little bit just to pick his brain. And then I see him on TV, and he's just a different person. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think look, I think the job really beat him down. I mean, you look at what he did when he was public advocate. He did a great job as public advocate, and you saw his first campaign, the Tale of Two Cities. Like he ran such a great campaign. It's like he's a lifetime politician. He's got the charisma. He's a good schmoozer, But this job, unfortunately, it was just a little too much for him. And I think he probably trusted the wrong people early on and couldn't
Uh,
recover from that. And I think he's just fed up and he's had it. But in terms of his retail politics, definitely he was great at it. He was absolutely great at it.
when you say public advocate, I think of another guy that couldn't do it, go from public advocate to mayor, and Mark Green. So it begs me this question because I've never really known: is he one of the first public advocates to become mayor in our lifetime, or has there been another?
It's a good question. I think he is. I think it's a newer type position. But I think he was the first one.
Because you remember Mark
Um,
Green
I
campaigned
remember,
as
yeah.
the public advocate and like his success there, and he just could not win a mayoral race. He did it like 3-4 times too.
Mm-hmm. I remember one time it was a little controversial. I think he kind of got stabbed in the back by the party one time, if memory serves
I
correctly.
think so. And
But
I saw him in a McDonald's one time, and I've seen him elsewhere, but like in a McDonald's randomly, it was kind of interesting. Oh, Mark Green.
you know who I saw randomly in a McDonald's once?
Who's that?
Curtis Sliwa,
Well,
because
that
he used to live in Forest Hills, and
okay.
so it was I'll be honest, it was late night, so I was going to get some McDonald's before going home, and Curtis Sliwa walks.
Was it by the station house?
It was by the station,
That
yes,
well, yeah,
that's
I've
it.
been there. I've been down that road before. Well, no, and Curtis is up all hours. I swear to God, like he's never done.
Yeah.
But the funniest thing is, so he's the reason why I got into radio. In fact, it's funny you mention him because 7 years ago today was my first day employed by Salem Media. So there you go.
Oh my God! Happy anniversary!
Thank you. And Curtis is the reason why. And nowadays
So cool.
in Penn Station or something, hey Alex. So it's like radio's so small, you don't, even though they may leave a place, they don't leave. You know what I mean? Like that we're all
Yeah.
so just interesting you share
It's
that.
family.
But you see, and I'm sure when he walked into the McDonald's, he was still very vigilant about like trying to get the ones that are a little kooky in the McDonald's. I'm sure he had that vision in him. I don't know.
I have no doubt. I didn't start a conversation with him, but it's funny because when he did walk in, this was this had to have been like 5 or 6 years ago. But if you remember, whenever it was at that time, crime was sort of ticking up on the subways again.
Okay.
And I kind of wanted, and I think homelessness was kind of ticking up on the subways again, and I kind of wanted to talk to him about it, but at that time in that setting, it was not really, like I wasn't going to start rambling, but it was just, it was just interesting. I'm like, oh, because like I honestly was thinking about his organization a little bit at the time,
right.
Because it's just like, oh, the subways are kind of getting not great again.
Well, right.
Obviously not what they were.
He's been patrolling. But what's amazing about him really quickly, just on the side, everywhere he goes, he gets this, hey, Curtis, we love you, Curtis. I don't know if at night too, but everywhere he goes, he's well known. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll run for mayor this time around.
And the Republicans, it's a tough battle for them because we're so entrenched in that left of center feeling right now. I don't know how we could get back to even middle. I just don't know, Zach. It's like it feels like a long
Well,
road to go.
you see, what I would like for the Republicans to do is to nominate somebody who's just down the middle, just like a very moderate person, and try that. I can't sit here and say it would be successful, but I could tell you they can't run a big Trump supporter for
Right.
mayor in New York City and expect to get anywhere. And that's all well and good, but we can't have the next mayor come from this the school that we were talking about earlier of
Mm,
just like the continuation of some of de Blasio's policies. And frankly, there are definitely things that de Blasio kind of put the kibosh on because he either didn't like it or he didn't like where it was going. And like
mm,
not to say de Blasio has done a particularly good job with anything, but there are some things that he has kind of blocked,
mm.
which you figure the next mayor won't be blocking those, and it could be problematic.
And I did miss going to the ADA gala, actually. I mean, that had to be canceled, but every year he does host one. I guess every mayor has, but it seems like he really puts out press releases for that ADA gala outside Gracie Mansion. That's an interesting day, too, because I get to see a lot of my friends from the community, which is fun.
And I hope they bring it back next year. I hope
Yeah, I hope all of this comes back. This has been
yeah.
here to see everything fans with no games with no fans, but then the fans. It's very weird. But no, the moderate is where we got to go. But I was going to say, but we can both agree right now, the unions and other things have their mark in City Hall, and they're not leaving anytime soon. Like they have a straight line to City Hall, and they'll elect someone who goes along with them. Right? That's kind of how the city's politics been at the moment.
I think it's actually shifted a little bit. The unions still have their power, no doubt, but I think that it's now more well-funded advocacy groups and powerful think tanks.
Mm,
I think what's happening in New York City is on a small scale what's been happening in Washington for the last couple of decades, which is because the thing about the unions, at least when the unions were in control, you kind of knew who. So like you knew who to blame if something
mm.
wasn't going right. You could, you kind of were able to easily track
Pinpoint
it.
it. Sure.
Now it's just harder to track who's doing what. And if you read some of these bills that are being proposed, more so in Albany, but definitely a little bit here in the city council, and you read them and you're like, you didn't write this. You
Mm.
certainly didn't write this, and I know a union didn't write. Sometimes unions do, and you could tell that as well. But a lot of them, you're just like, who the heck came up with this? What is this? And you haven't thought about a single unintended consequence, and it's really becoming problematic. And but I'll tell you what could be interesting in terms of the primary. Suppose the unions kind of rally behind one candidate
Mm.
and maybe some of these other groups rally behind another candidate. I
Right.
think that would be a really interesting dogfight right there. But I don't know what the unions are really thinking right now, especially because the city's budget is in such dire straits.
Right.
Now, De Blasio is not making any employee cuts. He's not issuing any layoffs, which I understand. But the next mayor is either going to have to make some
Mm.
layoffs or just cut services and budget to their bare bones, and that's going to have to come up in the mayoral election. I mean, that you can't escape that. So the unions, though, I don't think their power is what it was in this particular cycle.
No.
You will see, but you will see their influence. You will see them because they are going to fight for every single job, and they're going to kind of demand them take pledges about employment numbers, and we'll see. And it's a really interesting point you raised because we'll see sort of the power that they have, and then also sort of what politicians are beholden to them, and then
Mm-hmm.
who really does run the city.
Well, and my question then would be is because, and I don't even feel like criticizing the movement because I don't know if they're truly Marxists or anything like that. But BLM seems to be running policy too. I mean, they were saying to fund the police, and that's what exactly happened. And it's like, are we going to see more of that dictation as well?
So that time will tell. Only because BLM, I think BLM is, it's a couple of different things. Yeah, I'm with, maybe there's some Marxists there, but that this is not a Marxist agenda type of thing. But you have people who are just regular New Yorkers, who just want to see changes in
Fair
this country
policing.
long over, exactly, which is absolutely, let's have that conversation, long overdue. And then you have maybe some more liberal type of organizations, not related to BLM, but are going to use the BLM movement to
Wow.
Trojan horse their own agenda. So to answer your question about BLM and the mayoral race, that's what I would look for. I wouldn't exactly look to see a BLM, actual agenda. I would look to see groups that are more established kind of use BLM to Trojan horse
Maybe
their own
get paid
things
by
in there.
BLM to do it too, right? So
You know what? You know what the beauty is? These groups are so well funded; they don't even need the money. They just need they just need the shield to just say, "Oh yeah, and we're for justice and Black Lives Matter, and oh by the way, but this is what we really want," type of
but so
thing.
how do we stop that? Because I don't want that kind of being Trojan horse under our city. I just do not want
So
the
that's a great
defunding narrative.
that's a great question. I think one thing that can be done is to just go to just as an elected or as a group, just go to communities of color, to communities that have been underserved, and say, what do you need? What can we really do for you? Um, go to the people, and don't let Twitter or some other high paid advocates dictate the terms. Let the people dictate the terms. And you've seen it in the news recently. What is it, like 70% of Black and minority owned businesses had to shutter during COVID? Black and minority owned businesses weren't getting any of the city contracts.
I
It's like
saw that. Yeah, it's
it's like it's
ridiculous.
like start there. You want to talk about you want to talk about how do you prevent maybe a more radicalized agenda? Start there. Start with the minority owned businesses. Start with the you go to the communities of color. You talk to the leaders and you say, well, what do we do? What do we do to work together? You write the narrative, and you let people who have suffered write the narrative.
Right.
You don't let some sort of think tank write the narrative. Would be my, if I was running for mayor, that's what I would do.
Well, maybe someone will consult you on how to do this and get our city back. Who knows?
I got to figure out an hourly rate to charge.
But well, have you ever worked a campaign during all
No,
this? No.
no. The
Is that a
closest I
goal of
ever
yours or
gotten
not
to
really?
anything. No, I was summer between sophomore and junior year of college, I had an internship with the Parks Department in special events. That's the closest I ever got to government, and I liked it. It was a good internship. No, here's the thing. First of all, running an election, it is just grueling work. It is just 24/7 grueling work. And frankly, I like politics, but I don't particularly like politicians. Like, imagine liking sports but hating the athletes.
I know. It's exactly why I'd rather stay on the microphone side and just talk about all of it rather than get involved with it. I get what you're saying with that.
Yeah.
So, but Zach, I got to be honest with my listener, with our listeners today. I try and cheer you up every day with like, hey, did you see this glimmer of hope? Because I know you're a little down on the city right now, but if you could see a positive right now, do you see one for the city moving forward? I hope you do. I certainly try to every day.
That's a good question. Do I see a positive for the city moving forward? I think I think what you see in New York is a lot of fear and a lot of anger.
Mm,
And I think, but I think in terms of the positive is it doesn't take much to switch that narrative. You know what I mean? So it's
mm,
like if we get to a point soon where more things start to open up, I think if they go through and they open the schools and things are okay and the rates are still down, I think we'll start to see more of a, take a deep breath, move forward in a maybe a more positive way, thinking, okay, we kind of got this. We kind of got through the worst of this, and
mm,
we're picking up the pieces, and we're really moving forward. And that's why, really, I think, but that's why I think things are so low right now, because this is, it's either the calm before the storm, or it's we made it, and we don't
mm.
know yet at this point. It's like we're just going through that tunnel in the dark, and we're not
Right.
sure what's on the other side, but we know we're really getting close to it. So, I'm framing this as a negative, but it may not be. It's just sort of like, this is the moment. We're all in
Right.
that moment. And it's
Right.
just like, we just have to just grind it out a little bit more to see where we're at.
Mm,
So it's not a permanent type of malaise let's set in right now. It's very temporary. It's very much of the specific moment. And, we're going to get one way or another, we're going to get through it in a couple of
Zach,
weeks.
when you say it, it sounds more, I had to say official, but it sounds more grounded than when the mayor or governor say it. Because, like, when we don't want to hear from them that it's all fluid, we want definitive from them, don't we? So it's kind of weird that
Yeah.
it sounds good, but them saying doesn't sound good.
And that's sort of, those are the breaks with being an elected official. That's kind of part of the job, unfortunately. Um, but again, they don't do themselves any favors with the way
Right.
they conduct themselves. That's certainly for sure. Um, I don't know. You want a positive? We haven't heard Cuomo as much the last couple of
No,
weeks or
it's
so.
actually been the de Blasio show. It's been weird, actually.
Yeah, it has been. You're right.
Anyway, Zach, thank you so much for doing this today. This has been the Sunday Pod. Come back, of course, with updates you got. And your last radio show was interesting, but where can people find your podcast, the podcast of the show, and listen to you?
So you could go to newyorktruckstop.com, and we have a link to all the episodes there. And you could also just check out the AM 970 website. We have them all backlogged on. You could go to the podcast section or the local host section.
Of AM 970, the answer. Yep. All right, Zach. Take care, brother, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Alex. Thanks.
So glad having you, man. This was great. We'll talk to you soon.